Penalties, what a way to decide like the fate of a team's World Cup.
In 1990, England went out on penalties because they weren't very good at them. In 1998, they went out because they weren't very good at them and hadn't practiced them. But in the 2006 quarter-final against Portugal, things were different because we had players who were good at them and we'd practiced them.
You see Frank Lampard step up and you have the kind of confidence, you look down the rest of the list and think, OK, where are the potential misses going to come from?
Oh, he saved it!
Well, him for one.
That's a shocker, because even West Ham fans wanted him to score.
Next, Liverpool's penalty ace Steven Gerrard missed. Still, Jamie Carragher, who was only brought on to take a pen, scored. Oh wait, no he didn't, he had to retake it. And he missed. The only reason we managed to score one was because Bayern Munich's Owen Hargreaves had spent 7 years playing in Germany.
He's done it! Portugal are through, and England are out of the World Cup.
I hope they lost sleep. I do hope they lost sleep in them multi-million-pound bedroom swans.
England had failed again, but at least they'd set a new record. Most penalties saved in a World Cup shootout. Good work, boys. John Terry and England were going home, but he did find the time to congratulate clubmate Paulo Ferreira and maybe ask where his wife was. Was it bad luck? Was it bad technique? Or can we somehow blame the Wags?
Get the worst players to take them. That's what you need to do. Get the worst players to take penalties, yeah? Because history proves that the best players always miss.
America, land of the free, home of the hot dog, and inexplicably, the venue for the 1994 World Cup.
Personally, I don't think the World Cup should have been in America. They don't like football. They call it soccer.
I guess it was slightly controversial that America got the World Cup in '94 anyway, because you're a bit like, they don't play football, why are they? Fine. But then you think, they put on a good spectacle.
And what a spectacle the opening ceremony promised to be. There were balloons, there were people in traditional costumes, there was even Diana Ross. What could possibly go wrong?
I remember that being absolute farce.
Motown's answer to Frank Lampard made a lung-busting run the length of the pitch, whilst at the same time, amazingly, singing without moving her lips. Weaving her way through hundreds of dancers dressed as God knows what, she reached the edge of the box and steadied herself in front of goal.
It's about 5 yards, I mean, and the goal looks like a bigger than average goal as well to me. I mean, it's really stacked in her favour. She spoons it horribly off to the left.
I don't know whether Waddle had been coaching Diana Ross when she took that. Wow.
It all just sort of carries on. They just carry on like, yeah, that went pretty well, guys. No, yeah, carry on. Yeah, keep singing, that's fine, that's fine.
We've got used to seeing outrageous diving in football. But back in 1990, it was as foreign to us as drinking in moderation.
I think 1990 was when the diving became really prominent, and it was blatant, and it was people throwing themselves to the floor.
And nobody was throwing themselves more creatively than Germany and their striker Jürgen Klinsmann.
I think the Germans probably really did start the diving culture. They turned it into a trade, didn't they, where it was an art almost, a sick art in my opinion.
Klinsmann was doing triple salchos. He wasn't just going down slightly easily. He wasn't being nudged and it's a foul and he wanted to prove it to the referee. But these triple salchos and the kind of extra movements that he put into it were just embarrassing.
Klinsmann gets brought crashing down.
He didn't realise that it was a problem. He felt he was doing his job as a striker, which is either to score or make sure that your opponents get sent off or you win a free kick, or if you can do both at the same time, even better.
Deception is part of football, and the Germans were just first to get there, I think.
But of course we would never indulge in such antics, would we?
Did Michael Owen dive against Argentina?
Yes.
Possibly. It's open for debate.
No, it's not, because he did it again.
"1990, semi-final. What minute? Listen, I've told you not to call me at work. Here's my mum's favourite World Cup shot.
In 1990, one man played his way into the hearts of the nation.
I think everyone fell in love with Gazza in that World Cup. It was so exciting to actually have a player as good as him. He was just that crazy, idiotic Geordie lad who, you know, everyone's got a friend who's a bit touched, and he was everyone's friend who's a bit touched. He was traditionally British, he was mad as a March hare, but he was a genius.
The lovable Geordie was the best thing to come out of Newcastle since coal. The carbon-based fuel, not Cheryl. And he'd taken England to a World Cup semi-final.
Gazza was on fire in that tournament, and that match he was on fire.
Not literally. But like most things in English football, it was all about to go wrong and end in, well, tears.
And in the end, the German bench get up and protest at Gascoigne's last challenge. He has actually, Gascoigne, got a yellow card now. Oh dear me. He's going to be out of the final if England get there. And here is a moment that almost brings tears to his eyes.
The nation's collective lower lip went all wobbly as we watched a grown man lose the plot.
You can see that the Gazza that we know is now going to explode because he starts to bubble up.
You could see him starting to well up. Gary Lineker pointing, have a word with him, have a word with him. All that.
It's not often you see that on a football pitch, not that kind of emotion, not raw emotion while a game's going on.
And it wasn't just a little tear, it was just his whole face went red.
Every man watching that thought, this is great. Watching it saying, here we go, he's able to let go, express himself and show that he does have emotional capability. No, we didn't. We watched it and thought, what, pansy? What are you doing, mate? Just get on with the game, help your teammates to the final, none of this crying nonsense. But I tell you what, keep that up, you might get a crisp advert. And you too, Gary. Have a word with him.
The funniest thing which I just found out, when he kicked Thomas Berthold, Gazza went down to, like, console him, we thought. He said, well, when I kicked him, he said he was screaming. And only Gazza would think this. I thought to myself, if the referee hears him screaming, he's going to book me. So he said, what I was trying to do is I was trying to squeeze his lips to stop him screaming. So I looked at it again. He was actually trying to reach down and squeeze his lips together.
I'm pretty sure he was saying something in Geordie's like, shut your fat face, you German bastard.
Who would even think of something like that? And that is just Paul Gascoigne through and through.
Nice try, Gazza, but it didn't work. And when England lost on penalties, the waterworks started again.
You know, he was, very emotional, but it doesn't take him a great deal of time to get back to normal.
When the world tuned in for the 1998 final between France and Brazil, a collective gasp could be heard across the globe.
We've just had the surprise news, I suppose the shock news, that Ronaldo will not be in the Brazil 11 for tonight's match.
David, we have to start with the big news that Ronaldo's not playing.
Desmond, I've never had anything like this in my career. The scenes in the commentary boxes for the last 45 minutes have been absolute mayhem and chaos.
In come the team sheets, no Ronaldo. It's Hamlet without the prince. It's the main man's not there.
Early ball from Rivaldo, and here's Ronaldo! Whoa, goodness me!
He was unstoppable.
Right through, Ronaldo!
He was big news, he was big, ugly news.
We've seen, but here's Ronaldo!
He was expected to light up the final, but when he and his team were nowhere to be seen, Motti went into meltdown.
But the the first time in the World Cup, Brazil have not come out to warm up on the pitch. It's all a bit sinister.
It was the World Cup's very own X-Files moment. But instead of Mulder and Scully, the BBC had Hill and Ginola.
It could be an argument going on in the dressing room, which has caused the problems that John has sort of half suggested.
It's a big news for the French team because Ronaldo is very, very important for the Brazilian team.
After they failed to shed any light on the situation, there was a further twist.
Suddenly, the officials are coming around with more sheets, and Ronaldo's back in it.
For any players in the
What,
world.
David, I'm just going to interrupt you there because news has just come out that the biggest wind-up in World Cup football history has just hit the news because Ronaldo will play.
Ronaldo played, but he and his Brazil team had a shocker, and France won 3-0.
Zidane!
After the game, conspiracy theories started. Had Brazil's sponsors forced him to play through the pain barrier?
A lot of people said that he went on and he played because of certain sponsors.
Had his girlfriend dumped him?
He did look like he was a player who'd been jilted, actually.
Was it in fact Emil Heskey in a Ronaldo suit?
It does amaze me the lengths that players will go to.
Well, in fact, the truth was far stranger and more shocking than any fiction.
In the afternoon, during the hours before the final, Roberto Carlos wakes up with Ronaldo having seizures. He goes running to call the team doctor and the other people because he thought the guy was actually dying.
When Brazil's players took to the field, there was real concern for their star man.
A lot of the players have said, listen, we were terrified of him having something on the pitch. Roberto Carlos was actually afraid of Ronaldo dying.
I don't think Ronaldo was any different from the rest. I thought they all played like they'd fainted that morning.
Next up, it's a real sickener. Indeed, Peter. A right little winker.
In 2006, England had a chance of winning the World Cup, and his name was Wayne Rooney. However, in the quarter-finals, there was another player as good as Rooney, but he played for Portugal, and his name was Cristiano Ronaldo. They were teammates back in Manchester, the best of friends, although they made a very odd couple.
You've got a friend.
They were made for each other. It's so good because I think they're just completely the two polar opposites of men. Like, one of them is the modern metrosexual complexion of an air hostess, and the other one is just a big ginger ball of testosterone. Like, one wouldn't look out of place in a trendy bar in between a Cosmopolitan and a copy of Vogue. The other one wouldn't look out of place on a wall chart in between Homo habilis and Homo erectus.
You've got a friend.
But at the World Cup, friendship was put aside, even before the match had kicked off.
He knows Wayne Rooney, and you know, he's told his mates and whatever, you know what I mean, we can get him.
With the scores at 0-0, we were all hoping that Rooney was going to squash Portugal's tender dreams. But instead, he tried to squash Carvalho's tender parts.
Under the nose of the referee, and there's a bit of angst going on here. These Portuguese players are pushing Rooney.
The referee, if you look at it, wasn't going to send Rooney off. It was only when his Manchester United teammate, Cristiano Ronaldo, came along, and he was all like this, he was like, send him off, send him off.
And the referee has gone to his pocket, it's red!
These guys, they know what they're doing, and he knows Rooney's weak spots. He knows what's going to make him tick. He knows what's going to get him sent off.
Did the Portuguese try to wind Wayne up? Maybe. Did they get him sent off? It's a fact.
Ronaldo had betrayed a friend and sent England out, but far, far worse was to come.
The wink was like, you know, I got him. Do you know what I mean? But I felt like he got me too. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all felt like he got us.
I mean, I absolutely couldn't say what I was shouting at the TV.
Everyone in the room was fuming. They were just like, I can't believe he's done that, oh my God.
I could have just put my foot through the TV. He'd winked. He winked.
It even got the boys in the studio worked up.
Look at that. Is he just winked there?
Please tell me no.
I think there's every chance that Wayne Rooney could
go back to the Man United training ground and stick one on Ronaldo.
But while the nation worked itself into a lather, Ronaldo didn't see what all the fuss was about.
I say, referee, this is it's fault, but I don't say red card because Rooney, it's my friend.
Whatever you say, Ron.
Yeah.
Although we might like to think we are, we're not Germany's biggest rivals. It's this lot.
Holland-Germany must be I would say, the most bitter rivalry in Europe.
Germany-Holland has been a grudge match for a long, long time.
And their clash in Milan in 1990 lived up to its billing. Even the ref got involved.
And he's determined to stamp his authority, isn't he?
Probably one of the worst, ugliest scenes in World Cup history. The shirts are ugly, the haircuts are ugly, the facial hair is terrible.
But even more shocking than that was what Dutch midfielder Frank Rijkaard did to German striker Rudi Völler. Following a little playground spat, Rijkaard came back with a spit.
Did he spit at Völler as he ran past? Was that my imagination? Let's hope so.
It was just one of the most disgusting things I think that's ever been caught on camera. It was a full projectile gob. It's absolutely gross.
There is no worse way to insult a German than to spit in his mullet.
Well, there is. You do it twice.
Well, there was no doubt about it then. Rijkaard spat on Völler as he walked past him, and that, Bobby, is atrocious.
The mullet was so thick, it takes Völler a couple of seconds to actually realise, I mean, he's spat in my hair. I thought he was going to kill him. I thought at that moment he was going to kill him. Then he saw how big Rijkaard is and he thought, nah, spitting is horrible. But spitting in a mullet, Vorsprung dog, not good news.
What's that, Pete?
It's the hand of dog.
Poor, Peter. Very poor.
All right, it's the paw of dog.
No, here's the hand of God.
The 22nd of June 1986 and the Azteca Stadium in Mexico provides the backdrop for what nobody can deny is one of the World Cup's greatest ever shocks.
It's a bizarre moment, really, but I always remember the big shadow.
The big what?
The star-shaped ball. This star-shaped shadow in the centre of the pitch all the time in the main stadium, and thinking, where's that come from? How have they managed to do that?
It was in fact a piñata, a traditional Mexican decoration on which the organisers hung the stadium speakers, presumably for announcements such as, "Look out, he's going to cheat."
The Hand of God goal was singly the most ridiculous goal of all time.
I mean, I just remember being absolutely gobsmacked by it. This wasn't fair. Dad, this isn't fair. Why is this happening?
Just minutes into the second half, Argentina's Diego Maradona shocked the world by proving that he was an exceptionally handy player.
Why did you do it? Why did you do that thing?
Everyone saw the hand straight away. I mean, on the bench we all saw it. As Peter Shilton went to punch it, we saw him go up and we saw his hand come up and we saw him flick his head, but his hand, and we saw him run away, but people do that. He looked back when he ran away, expecting the free kick.
The big thing from his point of view was obviously the fact that he celebrated as though it was a legitimate goal.
And we just thought, well, the referee's going to give a free kick.
Millions of people all over the world saw what happened, but sadly, not the person who mattered most.
It was the first time, sort of, on live TV with a worldwide audience that someone had blatantly cheated.
Was it a use of the hand that England are complaining about? Well, certainly his arm was up. Peter Shilton protested immediately.
Sometimes things happen. It's inexplicable how on earth a referee could miss that.
We just couldn't believe that the referee or the linesman didn't see it.
With just sheer frustration that the referee and the linesman hadn't done their job properly, hadn't seen it, and that in a World Cup quarter-final was just unacceptable.
On the subject of people not doing the jobs properly,
I don't know how Peter Shilton gets out-punched by a midget.
He was the man of the tournament. He was the guy that you should really know, and you should know he's not that tall.
He leapt like a salmon. He outleapt Shilton. It was incredible. How did this happen? You know, he's 4'3". Maradona!
Afterwards, Maradona said it was a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God. But England's players and fans were left wanting to give him a somewhat less divine bunch of fives.
Maradona should have got a punch in the face from somebody on the field.
Peter, tell me honestly, would you ever do anything as nasty and low-down dirty as that just to win in South Africa?
Oh, yeah. Don't worry about that.
Good. I was hoping you'd say that.
It went crazy. I didn't think that it would go that... I mean, I knew that people wouldn't be happy, but I never knew that it would go that bad.
There was much rioting on the streets. It was really quite ugly for months afterwards.
He should never have done it. He should never, ever have done it. He should never have kicked out. And to be fair, he's cost us the World Cup, hasn't he?
In the summer of 1998, one man stood above all others as the most hated in England. He wasn't a murderer, a serial killer, or even Piers Morgan. But when David Beckham got sent off at the World Cup in France, it was such a shock that in the eyes of an angry nation, he became public enemy number one. England-Argentina in France 1998 was sizzling hotter than a Buenos Aires barbecue. And when Argentina's Diego Simeone attempted a one-man spit roast on David Beckham, he responded in the way that any self-respecting bleach blonde midfielder should, with a girly flick of his leg.
I couldn't see what had happened, you know, and I can see Simeone falling over, but then like really play acting. I was thinking, oh, just get up there, you.
Despite the kick being about as vicious as a loved-up butterfly, the ref saw it as violent conduct and sent Beckham off.
And a red card for David Beckham.
Yeah, it was a bit stupid and a bit crazy, straight in front of the ref, but let's face it, he didn't actually do anything to him.
It was a petulant little flick, and it certainly, I don't think it should have been sending off.
When I saw it on TV, I was like, he got a straight red for that.
Simeone had pulled out the oldest trick in the book of old tricks, and Beckham fell for it. Wind him up with a nasty dig, wait for him to react, and then put on a frankly ridiculous show for the ref.
It was interesting, it happened 2-3 minutes into the second half, and you wonder if the team took a half-time from the Argentinians was get into him, you know, because he's starting to dictate the pace of the game.
The night just got worse for Beckham and England. They lost the match, and there was only one person to blame.
But a mad moment by David Beckham probably cost you the game at the end of the day.
It's cost us dearly.
I was really disappointed in him. You selfish, you idiot, you kid.
If he didn't do that, I reckon we would have gone through.
The David Beckham effigy was literally the worst effigy I have ever seen. And I'm not an expert on effigies, I've never made an effigy. It was like a crash test dummy with a David Beckham shirt on it and a sarong. Didn't even put on like a little wig or those pants that he wears. If you're gonna make an effigy and you're gonna threaten a man's life, at least have the decency to go out and get the required materials and put in the time and the effort to render an effigy that looks like the guy you're threatening. Because that was...
As for Beckham, well, we didn't hear much more from him. If the World Cup proves one thing, it's that anything is possible. The only thing to expect is the unexpected. On the greatest stage of all, villains can become heroes and heroes can turn to villains.
It's time for number one, the most shocking World Cup moment of all.
It was the evening of July the 9th, 2006. The air seemed charged with the promise of seismic electric passion. No, nothing to do with Sven and Ulrika. This was the World Cup final between France and Italy, and 750 million jaws around the world were about to simultaneously hit the floor.
I remember watching that with my mates and honestly turning to each other. We could not believe that had just happened.
I must admit, my heart dropped. It was just a pub I was into, utter silence. No one knew what to say. You were like, wow.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, yeah, you can't believe actually happened, but it did.
The match was the grand stage for Zinedine Zidane, one of the greatest footballers ever, to take his final bow.
The stage was set for the great man to make a great exit, and it didn't quite end like that.
Zidane scored an audacious penalty. And then, with the scores level at 1-1, came a moment so shocking, the powers that be won't even let us show it.
You can't excuse that. Zidane's career ends in disgrace.
He's just lost it for no discernible reason and in front of so many people, and just nutted him.
I found it absolutely unbelievable that such a career that involved so much elegance and art should end with the kind of thing that someone might do in a pub after 10 pints of lager.
The planet reeled in shock, and then began a giant game of Chinese whispers.
He must have said something horrendous, you know, just out of order, inexcusable to provoke that reaction.
I knew they'd said something really horrible because Zidane's face changed, and it could have only been something to do with his family.
The other story is that there was a rumour about Zidane and some unpleasant personal business that had taken place in Turin when he was at Juventus, and that Marcello Lippi, who was manager of Juventus at the time, said to Materazzi, mention this to Zidane and just see what the reaction would be. And we did see the reaction.
In his farewell game from the sport, on the biggest stage of all, Zidane had capitulated. Italy won the World Cup on penalties, but the match will always be remembered for a moment of madness.
I don't feel sorry for Zidane, and I don't feel sorry for the French, because that won us the World Cup.
But there was one final sad, shocking and epic moment as Zidane did the ultimate walk of shame.
That vision of Zidane walking past the World Cup trophy as he exited the pitch is iconic now.
The best player in the world at the time walking past the World Cup that he should have won but has just thrown away because he's nutted a guy is a very arresting and powerful image.
But it's over now.
Cheerio then. So that's it. Up until now, those are the greatest shocks of the World Cup.
And there'll be more soon.
Another tournament's worth of drama and glory and dreams, and maybe this time...
Richard, stop. Don't say it.
But Peter, would it really be such a shock if we could... Shh.